Coastal puts ahead in front. Spectacular Bed back into second. Golden Act is third, approaching the 16th pole. It is an upset now. Summing has the lead by 2. Highland Blade is second. There is going to be an upset. Pleasant and Colony is third. They race down the stretch with Bet Twice extending the lead now to 8 lengths. Ellie Sheba is in 4th. Easy Goer gets clear by 4. Sunday Silence remains in 2nd.
And down the stretch they come. 3 of them in a line. Silver Charm at the rail. Touchbolt on the outside. Touchbolt puts ahead in front. It's going to be very close. Here's the wire. It's too close to call. Charismatic trying desperately to hold the lead, but he's lost it to Lemon Drop Kid as they come to the final furlong.
And War Emblem has given way. No Triple Crown for the 24th year. Empire Maker a short lead. Funny Side is doing his best, but he's dropping back. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past.
The Tara's opened up a 5-length lead, and Big Brown has been eased at the top of the stretch. The Triple Crown will remain vacant once again.
It has been 33 years since our last Triple Crown winner. 11 times since then, the Triple Crown has been on the line, and with each failure, the debate becomes hotter and hotter. Should the Triple Crown format be changed? Welcome to Racing Roundtable. Greg Wolf along with Rich Perloff. That is the debate we will be having tonight with our esteemed guests who will be joining us via the phone. Some who have covered horse racing over their entire lives, others who have trained over the course of their entire lives, some who have won Triple Crown races, and some won a Triple Crown. We'll get to all those guests coming up in just a little bit. Rich Perloff joining me on the show, and we will get into this. We've had some great topics on the show on Racing Roundtable. Exchange wagering, drugs in horse racing. This week, the Triple Crown. And it seems like over the last few years, the debate is really starting to heat up. Should it be changed? Distances, spacing between the races. What's your take?
Well, there's some very good arguments on both sides of the equation. We're going to hear them tonight. My position remains unchanged. I do not want the Triple Crown altered in any way, shape, or form, and I'll tell you why. I have 3 Triple Crown winners very clearly in my memory. Since I've been going racing, there have been 3 Triple Crown winners, Secretariat, Seattle Slew, and Affirmed. When the next Triple Crown winner comes along, I want to be absolutely certain that that horse can stand nobly alongside the 11 Triple Crown winners whose names we rightly revere. You know why it hasn't happened in so long? Because it's very, very difficult to accomplish.
Well, and we'll get into that, and even maybe spacing it out more. You can make the argument, we will get into it, could make it even more difficult and wouldn't take anything away from it. We'll have that argument coming up in just a little bit. So let's get into it. Why hasn't there been a Triple Crown winner since 1978, and does the format need to be changed? Well, the modern era, I guess how it's been right now with the spacing 2 weeks between the Derby and Preakness, 3 weeks from the Preakness to the Belmont, has been in place, Rich, since 1969. 13 horses have failed since that time in that third and final leg as you take a look at a list of the Triple Crown winners.
And one number jumps off this page at me. It's the number to the right of the name Secretariat. Greg, between 1948 and 1973, do you not think that racing fans were having this exact same conversation? I'm sure they were getting very, very frustrated. They wanted to see another Triple Crown winner. There had been a flurry in the 1940s, just as we saw in the 1970s. It was a long drought until Secretariat. That number is not so much lower than the number we're dealing with right now.
And we have some footage right now from TVG's 1951 airing of Racing Roundtable that had tackled this exact same topic. You were on that show.
Doesn't matter. Thanks.
Actually, we did not have that in the archives. We tried to dig it up, but of course we were not around back then. Let's take a look at the schedule as it stands right now. First Saturday in May 5th this year, mile and a quarter. Then, of course, May 19th, the mile and 3/16. Preakness and the Belmont, mile and a half. June 9th. And I guess as you look at it right now, Rich, that Belmont right now might be the race kind of taking the most heat in this Triple Crown series.
Sure, because a mile and a half is a curiosity kind of a distance. We'll see a graphic later on, I believe, indicating that horses that run in the Belmont and are successful in the Belmont really don't come back and run at 1.5 miles very often in their career. But Greg, since 1969, we've had the current format. Well, that means that we've had 3 Triple Crown winners in this format, which begs the question, and we're going to have people on our roundtable who can speak to it, begs the question, what has changed? Are horses fundamentally different than they were then?
Yeah. Oh, and people talk about the traditionalists say, oh, we don't want to change it. Well, the distances have not changed since 1930. The present schedule of 2 weeks between the Derby and Preakness and the 3 weeks from the Preakness to the Belmont have only been constant since 1969. There's been a lot of change over that course of time as you take a look at this graphic right here. And even in 1956, which I don't believe is on here, that was Needles, he had a month break before the Belmont.
Sir Barton, 4 days between the Derby and the Preakness. Gallant Fox, 8 days between the Preakness and the Derby. Assault, 7 days between the Derby and the Preakness. Just indicates to me it's gotten easier over time.
All right, so there has been a lot of change, and those traditionalists that say, oh, we don't want to change anything, well, it's kind of fluctuated throughout history. As we take a look at the near misses, Big Brown, of course, well, not the nearest of misses. He didn't really have his game that day. Smarty Jones, oh, how maybe things could have gone differently if the race shaped up a little differently and he wasn't challenged by Jerry Bailey in Eddington.
You know what? That's perfectly true, but I would counter that, and I'm one of those let's not change the Triple Crown guys. I would counter that by saying if you are not the horse that can take all the heat that Rock Hard 10 and Eddington want to throw at you in the early stages of the race and still go on to victory, you're not a Triple Crown winner.
All right, well, let's get into it now with our panel of guests. We start with Jay Pribman, who joined the Daily Racing Form back in 1998, covers Southern California racing and the Triple Crown Breeders' Cup for Daily Racing Form, and a 6-time winner of the Red Smith Award. Jay, thanks for coming on the show. We're so glad to have you here with your so much you know about this game and cover it your entire life. What is your take on this? Why has there not been a Triple Crown winner? What do you think about the format? Does it need to be changed?
Well, Greg and Rich, it's good to be with you. I'm in the camp of Rich Perloff. I think that there's a number of reasons why it hasn't happened, but first and foremost is that there hasn't been a horse good enough to do it. And when one of those horses comes along, it will happen, and we will rightly celebrate the greatness of that horse. You know, this is a conversation that we wouldn't be having if Smarty Jones had held on, if Real Quiet had held on. I mean, it's been tantalizingly close over the years, and if any one of those horses had won it, this conversation would have been rendered moot. But they weren't quite good enough to belong in that pantheon, and I'll look forward to the day when one does come along. You know, there's several other things that have made it a more difficult endeavor, and I think most notably is what's happened with the Kentucky Derby. If you look back over the years and look at the field sizes, for instance, when Secretariat or Affirmed or Seattle Sioux won the Derby, it's not what it is now with this 20-horse cavalry charge, and it makes just winning the first leg of the Triple Crown all that more difficult. And then you've got 2 more to go.
Jay, Rich Perloff here. Let me ask you this, because a lot of what we're talking about, whether we favor a change or favor staying the course, I think it begs the question, what does racing potentially realize? What's the benefit to racing of a Triple Crown winner, and why does all this pressure build up behind some way of engineering a Triple Crown winner with a slightly different format? You know,
I would not want to see a Triple Crown winner engineered with a different format. I'd like to just see it happen. But to the overview of your question, you know, I've been struck by the conversation that happens every year of how there's this assumption that racing needs a Triple Crown winner. But I always hear that from people who aren't in the game on a daily basis more than people who are, as though a Triple Crown winner is going to be, you know, this magical godlike creature that is going to somehow save racing. First of all, racing doesn't need to be saved. But secondly, in my opinion, a Triple Crown winner alone is not going to solve some of the systemic problems that makes racing not as popular as it might be. What a Triple Crown winner will do is bring attention to that horse if and when he subsequently runs, and if it's a gelding, he'll run a lot. If it's a colt, though, he might not run much more often before he goes off to stud, and then the windfall of that Triple Crown will be quite brief. So, you know, if a Triple Crown winner can lower the takeout and reduce the number of racing dates, then great. But I don't know that that's what a Triple Crown winner can do.
You know, Bobby, those outside of racing, that's where fans who don't watch it every day get involved in horse racing. Wouldn't extending the series which you could argue could get more horses into the starting gate and better horses. Wouldn't it also elongate and prolong this Triple Crown that would get more eyeballs on the series?
That's possible, but I think the concentrated nature of it does bring attention to it and keeps people's attention on it. Unfortunately, in this day and age, it seems as though people are easily distracted, and I think that if you stretched it out over a couple of months, there might be other things that come along that people get interested in, like, for instance, the Indy 500 is on Memorial Day, or baseball games. The All-Star game comes up in July. It depends on how much spacing, in theory, you're looking at. I've had this conversation with Randy Moss, who I greatly respect over the years, and he's of the opinion that it should be changed and that there should be spacing between more spacing between the races. But he's also of the opinion that it would actually maybe make winning a Triple Crown more difficult, because you'd keep a lot of the same horses around, and you wouldn't have the attrition rate that you do from the Derby to the Preakness and the Preakness to the Belmont. And I think that's a very interesting aspect of potentially changing the Triple Crown, which is why I keep coming back to leave well enough alone.
All right, Jay, if you could hang on for us, we'd appreciate it. We're going to play rotating guests here as we move on, and we'll get back to you in just a moment. We bring in now Ray Pollock from the PollockReport.com, who's been a guest on all kinds of shows we've had here at TVG over the years, and we have him via Skype from Palm Beach Shores. How's life in Palm Beach?
Everything is great down here.
Well,
good to talk to you guys.
Good to have you on. Let's pose it to you. Why has, in your estimation, there not been a Triple Crown winner, and what do you think needs to happen with the format?
Well, it's funny. Back in the 1970s, when we had 3 Triple Crown winners and a near miss with Spectacular Bid, Billy Reed, the sports writer from Louisville, wrote that the Triple Crown was too easy to win. So in the 70s, we had something just the opposite of what we have today. I think Jay touched on something very important, and that is the field size in the Derby, the emphasis on winning the Derby. It takes a lot out of horses. But something that I've noticed with 3 of the Triple Crown near misses, from Spectacular Bid to Real Quiet and Smarty Jones, is that jockeys really don't know how to ride 1.5 miles in the dirt. That's something, this is the only race of the year like it, and I think that makes a difference.
Who did you think going into, we've had, of course, since our last Triple Crown winners, we take a look at Spectacular Bid, and didn't happen this year as well, not since 1978, but 11 times it's been on the line since then. Who did you think really had the best shot over the years since that time going in to win the Triple Crown?
Well, obviously, I thought Real Quiet, right up until about the 16th bowl, had the best shot, and he got caught in the final yards of the race. I thought Silver Charm was really a horse that was good enough to win the Triple Crown. Maybe not a great horse, but good enough. I go back to Sunday Silence, and Easy Goer ruined it for him, but I think he was a better horse going 1.5 miles. So it's not just a matter of who is the best horse, but who's the best horse that can get that distance of 1.5 miles. And you don't know until that day.
Joining us right now is trainer Billy Turner, who began training back in 1966, of course, trained Seattle Slew to the Triple Crown in 1977, and is the only living trainer of a Triple Crown winner. Billy, thanks for coming on Racing Roundtable. Great to have you. Let's get your thoughts. It's been quite a while since you, the game has changed quite a bit since you trained your Triple Crown winner, Seattle Slew. What are your thoughts on the Triple Crown? Why have we not seen a winner in so long? And what do you think about the format? Does it need to be changed?
Well, I think I don't think the format has to be changed. I just think that we have to change our thinking in one, the way we raise our horses, 2, the way we medicate our horses, and 3, the way the racing secretaries write the races. I mean, the racing secretaries are writing races they really de-emphasize distance racing, and that's a major part of the Triple Crown. The breeding end of it, really with the post Seattle Slew era, Seattle Slew told people that you could go out and buy the best horse in the world at the sale, and from that point on, the sales took off. And when they took off, well, then people started breeding. They saw big money in it, and so they started breeding to sell, and the great majority of them were interested in selling rather than breeding.
Well,
and,
Billy,
hello.
Breeding's been it's such big money now. It's almost becomes almost like a runaway train. Is that something that can be changed in this sport, or do we have to go another way about it?
Oh no, it can be changed. It's just it very definitely can be changed. In fact, if it isn't changed, well, people are going to lose interest in the business because it's a fact that the horses that are running in the Triple Crown start fewer times before the race. They run they do less running. They've had less experience going long, and so all those things put together, and then that can be changed.
Well, here's a look supporting what you have said here, the average starts per decade, and it has steadily gone down, just 6.6 average starts per decade from 2000 to 2009.
Well, the thing is, you've got to throw the one thing that everybody knows is true, or the horsemen know is true, but they don't want to admit it, and that's the Lasix factor has very, very had detrimental effects on the whole breed, and we'll understand it as we get away from it. We'll look back on it and we'll say, gee whiz, how did we ever make that mistake?
Billy, a lot of folks argue that racing needs to have a Triple Crown winner in order to bring further interest and notoriety to the sport. In your recollection of Seattle Slew's run to the Triple Crown, did you perceive that the racing game in general got that kind of a lift from having a horse accomplishing what Slew did?
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, in Seattle Slew's case, he probably was at the pinnacle of the both the media and the press coverage of all time, because Secretariat stirred them up. And then you have Seattle Slew coming right after it, well, 4 years later. You have him coming along, and Secretariat was put up as a god and in a class by himself. And then all of a sudden, you have Seattle Slew coming along, threatening his throne, more or less, and that got the public just absolutely going wild. And so then Slew got an unbelievable amount of press and media coverage, and then it just got the stir. It really stirred up the Triple Crown, and it just kept going.
Well, it was a golden age in terms of the Triple Crown with three in that decade in the 70s, including Seattle Slew in 1977. Billy, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it. We have to let you go. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Racing Roundtable. Our topic, the Triple Crown. Does the format need to be changed? More discussion coming up after a quick break. We'll be back.
I think the distances, and even though they're pretty demanding, I think they don't need to be changing them, because it's something. I think it would just totally take away from it. You know, everybody wants to get the Triple Crown done. I'd like to see a bonus put back in there, and I'd like to see a smaller gate in the Kentucky Derby, because I know people don't like to see that. They want to see 20 or whatever, but when you had one gate, like Silver Charm, there was 14 horses in there, and everybody ran back. Most of them ran back in the Preakness and in the Belmont. And I think if you get the best 14 horses, they need to run in the next race, the Preakness and the Belmont. Now with a full field of 20 horses, so much goes on that people just skip the Preakness and they'll wait for the Belmont or just wait whatever. But I think it's very important that if they had one gate with the best 3-year-olds in the country, they would and put a bonus in, they would probably all come back, most of them, because they'd get a fair shot at running and run back in the Preakness and the Belmont, because I think we're losing that excitement because people are just not running back in the Preakness.
Well, you would think if there's someone that wants to see a change with the heartbreaks he has had, it would be Bob Baffert, but not the case.
Three times in a 6-year span, Bob Baffert went to Belmont Park with a chance at Racing Glory, and he still seems to want to hold the line here, but I think he makes a really good point. about the Derby, and that is the race that most folks look to as saying it's a race because of the field size and the traffic trouble encountered by a lot of those horses. Maybe we're diluting the field by going out to 20, that maybe this race is less about the best 3-year-old than it is about who gets the dream trip on the day.
Yeah, that auxiliary starting gate makes it difficult. It's a cavalry charge, although Big Brown overcame it from post 20 when he won.
Well, it's true, and there have been a number of Triple Crown winners who have beaten more than 13 other horses on their way to Kentucky Derby glory.
As that graphic shows you right there over the years in the Triple Crown winners, the field sizes that they had to defeat were admirable to take on 20 starters. We bring in now Arthur Hancock III, an impressive resume that he brings to racing. More than 100 stakes winners have been raised at his Stone Farms. He co-bred and owned Stone Farms' first Kentucky Derby winner in Gato del Sol and co-owned 1989 champion 3-year-old and Horse of the Year Sunday Silence, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1996. Arthur, thank you for coming on and being part of Racing Roundtable. What are your thoughts in terms of the format of the Triple Crown? Do you think it needs to be changed?
No, I wouldn't change it. I think that, that's what makes it the Triple Crown. And if you change it, you lose the tradition. You cast it to the wind. Why change it?
Mr. Hancock, we touched on this briefly with former trainer Billy Turner. He's very clear that some of the stoutness and the stamina and the hardiness is being bred out of the thoroughbred, and that's become almost conventional wisdom. You hear that so often. You're certainly very intimately connected to the breeding part of racing. Do you agree with that? And if so, does that mean that there's this inexorable kind of a tension between the breeding interests and the race fans who are craving another Triple Crown winner?
Well, if you go back to the 50s, horses averaged 45 lifetime starts in their lives. Some of them would run 70 times, others 20, 30, but the average was 45. Now it's less than 13 lifetime starts. So just on statistics alone, you got a lot less chance of having a horse with the strength and the stamina to withstand the Triple Crown. Yes, I do believe what Billy said, and I think that Lasix is one thing you run in the Derby. If a horse is on Lasix, then 2 weeks later he's back for the Preakness on Lasix. I think by the time he gets to the Belmont, he's drained somewhat. And genetics don't change any species, that rapidly. So there's something different, and I have to think it's the medication, and not only the Lasix, but all these different steroids. I think somebody was saying there's 100 or more steroids that they can't test for, and horses are run on these things, and they're becoming less sound. And as you pointed out a minute ago, in the 60s, horses averaged 11.2 starts a year, and now it's down to 6. That's almost a 50% drop, annually.
Yeah, it's an alarming drop as we look at Sunday Silence here in that Kentucky Derby victory. What about, so you mentioned that, obviously horses now being bred a lot more for speed, but the drugs as well, something that's kind of reducing the success in terms of stamina of horses. And also there's so many more horses. Breeding is such a big business now, and the full crop is enormously larger than what it was a decade, 2 decades ago. How big a factor is that as we take a look at that 369,000 plus the full crop estimated over the last decade?
Well, you would think the bigger the foal crop, I guess there's 2 ways to look at that statistic. You might think out of all those numbers, there'd be a super horse who could win the Triple Crown. On the other hand, maybe by the time, the horse that's won the Derby and the Preakness gets to the Belmont, there's a fresh horse waiting in the wings to knock him off.
And we have had some good ones. I mean, just the other year, Escandere, who knows what could have happened, but we've had some good ones go down, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. Well, I'm sure we'd still be having the conversation, but it may have dampened a little bit.
Right, for sure.
All right. Well, Arthur, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. It's a topic that definitely is going to continue on for some time. And in horse racing, it's hard to get a big change like this to happen. So I'm sure if it does, it's going to take some time. All right, Arthur Hancock III, we appreciate him coming on. We'll get back to the discussion in a moment. Do you have a quick thought?
One thing about that foal crop is that in the 1970s, that was the hugest, that was the biggest one-decade explosion in the foal crop size, over 280,000. We got 3 Triple Crown winners out of that sequence.
We're going to get back into our discussion and get into the specifics of exactly what should be changed and who would go about doing that. We'll have some guests coming up to talk about that when we return, including Barkley Tagg, trainer of Funnyside, Kentucky Derby winner. We'll be back with more Racing Roundtable in just a moment. Dwayne Lukas also will give his thoughts on how he thinks the format should change. We'll be back. Back on Racing Roundtable and the Triple Crown, our topic on this evening. And we heard from Bob Baffert. He is not a proponent of changing. He's a traditionalist, but some who have dominated in the Triple Crown, like Dwayne Lukas, who has 13 victories in Triple Crown races, he thinks there does need to be changes. Let's hear from Dwayne Lukas.
One of the things that really comes to mind is that it's no longer a Triple Crown. It's about a 5-race series. Because everybody is so dead set on getting into the Kentucky Derby, with the earnings thing coming into place so strongly lately, especially now in the last few years, almost 250,000 to get into the race. They want to get in so badly that you cannot take a soft approach. Back in the 60s, 70s, so forth, where there wasn't any problem of getting into the Derby, you developed your horse accordingly, and you didn't have to worry about the earnings. Now you better look good in the Arkansas Derby, the Santa Anita Derby, the Wood, the Louisiana Derby. You better bear down, because if you don't, you might not even be in the race. And most of these people want to be in it. So that's one of the problems. So now you go for 2 or 3 tough races instead of just prep races. We call them preps for the Derby. They're far from that anymore. And you get to the Derby and you get a 20-horse field, which is more demanding on a horse than, say, when Calumet was winning them with 7 horses and 6 horses and so forth in the field. That's a big difference. Ask Bob Baffert, Nick Zito, myself, Graham Motion, anybody, that 20-horse field is tough on a horse.
Oh, great point from Dwayne Lukas. A lot of stress on a horse just getting him to the Kentucky Derby, and then even more stress running in those races. So and we'll get your thoughts on this in just a moment.
Okay.
But Dwayne Lukas, how would he solve the problem? Let's listen.
The other thing is, I've always advocated changing the distance, but that isn't going to happen in my lifetime or yours. So we probably aren't going to go. I always thought if we went from 1.125 to 1 mile and stretch it out to 1.316 at Pimlico, and then 1.25 miles, the classic distance at Belmont, which we know we now can run because the Breeders' Cup has done it successfully, that we would keep the fields and the stars together. One of the problems in racing is we don't have the fan base can't follow the stars.
All right, so that is what Dwayne Lukas has proposed, different distances. And let's take a look at the Lukas plan, different distances. And he's also, we've read, proposed some more spacing between the races as well. But the Kentucky Derby, in his estimation, should be not 1.25 miles, 1.125 miles, and the Belmont Stakes shortened up to 1.25 miles.
Yeah, again, see, I think this begs the question, what are we trying to accomplish? If we are doing this, if we are changing the distances of the Triple Crown races, we're trying to engineer a Triple Crown winner, and to what end? I mean, does racing really realize that kind of a benefit? And even though it goes against the grain for me to disagree with the coach on anything, because I have such enormous respect for Dwayne Lukas, I would have to say, Greg, that the graded stakes earnings thing, the way that Dwayne laid it out, I think that's true for some horses, but not for all horses, because we see year after year after year a lot of horses who amass a lot of earnings as 2-year-olds or maybe very early in their 3-year-old campaign. That gives their connections, their trainers, the license to back off and bring them up to the Kentucky Derby in a much more leisurely manner.
When you Delta Downs as a 2-year-old, you're set. That's a whole other topic.
You're already
of
in the
discussion.
field, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get back to that in a moment. Let's check back in with Ray Pollock out in Palm Beach and get his thoughts. What do you think about this Lukas plan of changing the distances?
He's been an advocate of that for a while, and I disagree. I like the fact that the Derby starts at the top of the stretch, in the chute. It doesn't make sense the way it's currently laid out, that you go a mile and a quarter, you go a mile and 3/16, and you go a mile and a half. But I also don't really like starting a mile and a quarter race at Belmont Park on the turn, even though they do it in the Breeders' Cup Classic and they now do it in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I do like the fact that it's the one race a year, I think, that starts right in front of the grandstand.
All right, Ray, thank you. We'll get back to you a little bit later on in the show with more thoughts on how we can change things. Let's bring in John Preachy, an executive editor for HorseRacingInsider.com. He's been a contributing racing writer to MSNBC.com for a long time and an award-winning journalist while at New York Newsday. Has been very outspoken on the Triple Crown and things that should change about it. And you are not a traditionalist, John, in the Triple Crown. You do think there should be changes, but your plan differs from that of D. Wayne Lukas.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. And secondly, now I'm a traditionalist when it comes to distance. I would like to leave those alone. And if we could, let's work a little bit backwards here. I mean, first of all, I agree with Billy. I mean, the effects of Lasix, we're all seeing the effects of that now. We're breeding for the sales ring. We're not breeding for the racetrack. Of course, the horses are finer. They're not as coarse as they used to be and can't stand the gaff, according to that chart that you put up, which was very illustrative. But if we work backwards from the Belmont is never going to be an easy race to win because it's a mile and a half, and I would disagree with the coach, too, in that that's the first classic distance. The mile and a quarter is the American classic distance, but I guess the world classic distance is a mile and a half. That's never going to be an easy race to win. As far as maybe Bob's plan is concerned, was reducing the field to 14. 14 doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to get a clean trip. Listen, my whole argument, I want to extend the series, but I'm thinking of it more as the public. Wayne said something that rang true in that, the public can't follow the series. They can't follow the horses. My idea of stretching out the series is that we can bring these Kentucky Derby horses back, more of them in the Preakness, and more of them in the Belmont. And here's another notion, too, that isn't that also a challenge to the trainers to keep horses at a very high level over, say, a 2-month period as opposed to 5 weeks? It's going to be the sort of the freak of nature, the real great horse, the Secretariats, the Slews, the Affirms that are going to win the Triple Crown. But, as far as standing the test of time and how a lengthened Triple Crown would water down the accomplishments of the past, well, I don't think anybody would disagree with the notion that the horses that have been going for the Triple Crown in the last decade or decade and a half, couldn't hold a candle to the Slews and Secretariats. They were once in a lifetime.
And John, you're getting watered down fields too. The way it stands right now in the Preakness and especially in the Belmont, if you did space them out more, it might even become more difficult to win the Triple Crown.
Listen, the Derby with 20 horses is always going to be a crapshoot, and the best horse is not going to always win the Derby because of that crapshoot. So there is one element of the Triple Crown that's going to be difficult. It's difficult to win the Kentucky Derby. You need the horse. You need the first Saturday in May to time to the moment, and you need the horse to get 10 furlongs that early in the season. Then you're coming back in 2 weeks, which is so unrealistic. Mr. Hancock noted, they're racing on Lasix in the first leg. They come back in the second leg 2 weeks later on the same medication, and then by the time you go another 3 weeks, they're all dehydrated out of there. Listen, I'm thinking about the sports. I don't know how 2 months could not be a better exposure for our sport. Listen, like it or not, we're one bad step away from putting the padlock on these racetracks. The Triple Crown is never going to lose its popularity. We're breeding for the sales ring, as I mentioned before, the effects of the with the Lasix and breeding for the sales ring is also breeding the stamina, out of the horses. So let's accommodate ourselves to the horses that we have today. They're not as tough, just like those riders can't time those mile-and-a-half races maybe the way some of the old schoolers could. These horses can't stand the gas, and that is a problem.
Well, and that goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, that drugs have weakened the breed a little bit, and now we breed for stamina, or not for stamina, but for speed these days, and those 2-year-old in training sales. There's Secretariat, who certainly was a horse that was bred for going long, and one of the greats. John, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. And part of his plan, we got to get over to Tom Cassidy right now because we have live racing, but a July 4th Independence Day, final leg of the Triple Crown in the Belmont. I mean, how much fervor would that create with the Triple Crown on the line on Independence Day?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I think John made a great point when he said that the horses of today, you look at our list of horses that came to Belmont Stakes live for the Triple Crown, you look at that list, and I agree, these horses don't hold a candle to Secretariat and Seattle Slew and Affirmed. Well, I'm waiting for that horse. My only problem is that if we retool the system as a concession to what horses have become now, what do you want to call that? You can't call it the Triple Crown. It's comparing apples and oranges. It's not the same accomplishment as the 11 horses that are already on our list.
More to come.
Bust out the asterisk is what I'm trying to say.
We've talked a lot about what changes should be made, traditionalist, or should there be changes to the Triple Crown. Now we're going to get into if actually you wanted to make changes, how would you go about doing that? We bring in Georgianne Hale, who got her first job at Pimlico all the way back in 1984, is the racing secretary for the Maryland Jockey Club since 2000, a very successful female in a male-dominated sport. Georgianne, thanks for coming on. We appreciate the time. If there were changes that everyone could agree on, and that's saying a lot, and it'd be a long time to get there, but how would you get into the mechanics of making the changes in the Triple Crown?
Well, I think everybody is probably afraid of breaking tradition, but all 3 Triple Crown tracks would have to get together and all, agree on the changes to be made.
Have there ever been discussions of that sort, Georgianne? Have the representatives of the various racetracks ever come at it from the perspective that it would be good for racing to get another Triple Crown winner? How can we facilitate that? Has that even come up?
I think it was brought up last year. I don't know if the tracks were talking about it, but other racing fans were saying, wouldn't it be nice if we had more time in between the races?
I had read a little bit too after the Barbaro incident back in 2006 that discussions came up about it as well. How serious did discussions have they got at any point then or up to now? And what do you think has been the best suggestion that you have heard?
Everybody talks about it. I don't think anybody's been serious about changing. I think people are afraid to change tradition. And I think the best thing, it would certainly for the Preakness would benefit tremendously, would be to have more time, after the Derby coming into the Preakness.
And what do you think? Maybe an extra week, make it 3 weeks instead of 2, or what would be your best thought?
I think just having an extra week would help. Would help a lot. You would give the horse another week, and the horses that come in that are fresh, usually the horses that didn't run in the Derby, the fresh horses, then even the Derby horses would be a little fresh.
All right, Georgianne, we appreciate you coming on. We got to wrap things up here in a moment, but we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Georgianne Hale, racing secretary for the Maryland Jockey Club. Let's get back to we'll get back to Ray Pollock in a moment. We got some tweets coming in, and you're the captain of the our tweet part of the show here, so go ahead and fire away here.
Wish there were Final Four type races in each section of the country, and only the top 3 from each making a 12-horse Derby field. Okay, so advocating some kind of a
May Madness
bracketology sort of a thing. I think that'd be even a harder sell. In other words, so you're going to try to funnel the top 3-year-olds into specific races to try to get them to move down the Derby trail in a predictable manner. Boy, that seems to be much more structured and therefore more difficult to accomplish.
Oh, and how many Derby winners didn't win their final prep leading into the Derby? So you'd eliminate some good ones.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, in our current configuration with graded stakes earnings and whatnot, it's not incumbent on a lot of these horses to win their Derby prep. If you're a handicapper, you got to be aware of that kind of thing.
All right. Do you have a handle, by the way? Twitter handle?
No.
Okay. We got another one here from Simon, I believe, and
Simon
from
Bray?
Timeform.
Oh. For what it's worth, as an outsider, I love your demanding and still sought after Triple Crown, including the need to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. Okay, all right. You know, because the British Triple Crown, much more spaced out, and it begins with a 1-mile race, the 2,000 guineas. The Japanese Triple Crown, we just had a Japanese Triple Crown winner this year, much more spread out. You can argue either side of that, easier or more difficult for a racehorse to maintain that level of fitness in a 5-week blast, the way we have it here, or over a period of several months. But that's an interesting perspective from someone who's not native to the U.S., enjoying the pursuit of the Triple Crown here in North America.
There's not really I mean, Japan, England, there's not the fervor that we have, the madness for the Triple Crown, would you say, is there, that they have over there?
Listen, in the UK, they have not had a Triple Crown winner since 1970, and I don't hear them talking about it all the time, clamoring for one. It's been since Nijinsky. They just went through, Deep Impact to Orfevre. There's not that much of a gap, but their list of Triple Crown winners is a relatively exclusive bunch as well. I think in all environments, the whole point of the Triple Crown is that it's a monumental achievement, and it ought to be, and I think that's a theme we've heard repeated throughout this show.
All right, well, let's get back to Ray Pollock and get some final thoughts. Ray, you've had plenty of time now to restructure this whole thing, so I'm sure you've mapped out the whole plan for us. What'd you come up with?
Well, you know, one of the most interesting statistics that I found in the Triple Crown is we all know that Todd Pletcher went 0 for 24 until he won the Kentucky Derby a couple years ago as Super Saver. During those same years, he was only 0 for 4 in the Preakness. John Nehru calls it a war of attrition, the Triple Crown Series. And so, you know, with that in mind, and in order to help get more horses to run in the Preakness, as George Ann Hale said, I think we should go to a 1-month gap between the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, go from the first Saturday in May to the first Saturday in June, and then go with another month gap between the Preakness and the Belmont and make it, you know, a May, June, July series. I don't think that stretches it out too much. I don't want to mess with the distances. I also think after hearing several comments about medication, we should eliminate the race day medication, go with the protocols that the TOBA is calling for 2-year-olds this year. And also, I mean, this may sound a little Machiavellian, but I would say no private veterinarians in the barn of a Triple Crown horse for a week before the race. Do everything with state vets. We don't need private vets in there messing around.
All right, well, Pletcher, he's not a fan of change. Steve Asmussen, he is not a fan of change, and he knows, he's aware that there have been changes in the past, Ray. He said Curlin, he ran in all 3 legs. He went on to win $10 million. He said it's not supposed to be easy. I don't know if that argument holds, because it could be maybe more difficult if you get better horses with spacing, but he wants to see it kept the same.
Yeah, I'm suggesting a change, not for the benefit of making a Triple Crown winner and manufacturing one, but to make it a better series for the horses, so that, you know, it's easier on the horses. It might be tougher to win, and you know, look, 8 of the 11 Triple Crown winners did not win under the current system that you referred to earlier in the show of 2 weeks and 3 weeks. So it's not like if you win the Triple Crown with a different you know, gap between the races, it doesn't make it any easier. It just makes it different.
Ray Pollock, we appreciate it, and you can get more from Ray at Ray Pollock or PollockReport.com. We appreciate you coming on, and certainly going to hear more from Ray. He's been a constant contributor on Racing Roundtable. Thanks to all of our guests. We actually couldn't even get to them all because we were under time constraints, but a topic that is a very hot one right now, and we're getting very close to some of the big preps coming up. And
this could be the year. This could be the year, just when you least expect it.
And then we won't have this discussion for another 25 years, right?
Then we'll get a flurry. Then we'll have 5 in a row, and they'll be talking about making it more difficult.
And then we'll bring this show out in the archives 25 years from now. The last horse to accomplish the Triple Crown, affirmed for Laz Barrera, was Steve Cawthon aboard back in 1978. It has been 33 years. 11 have tried and had the Triple Crown on the line in that third and final leg in the Belmont and have come up short. Will 2012 be the year? Thanks for watching Racing Roundtable, the Triple Crown. Next week's topic, the U.S. versus the world. Who has the best horses? Thanks for watching Racing Roundtable on TVG.
Right in the middle of the stretch. It's Alidar and Affirmed battling back along the inside. We'll test these two to the wire. Affirmed under a left-hand whip. Alidar on the outside driving. Affirmed and Alidar heads apart. Affirmed's got a nose in front as they come onto the wire.